Hello, everyone, and inside today's Locked On Canadiens, we're going to talk about the panic for some reason around Shane Wright. We're going to break down Edmonton and LA's Game 7. We're going to break down Boston and Carolina's Game 7. And yes, don't worry, we are going to make this podcast about the Toronto Maple Leafs as well.
For Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 616. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. And as always, thank you for making Locked On Canadiens your first listen or your first watch of the day. We are available on YouTube every morning at about 12:30 a.m. when the new episode drops, or in your podcast feed. For those of you who might have forgotten, I am Scott Matla. I am back after my week away from podcasting duties. Duties. Yes, indeed. I have to thank my fantastic co-host, the Active Stick, Laura here, for holding the fort down to give me a week just to kind of recharge the mental batteries and kind of get myself ready and primed for the stretch run through the summer here. And I'd be remiss if I didn't ask my co-host, Laura. It is now a beautiful Sunday here in Buffalo. I assume very similar up in Montreal. There are two more Game 7s tonight. But before we get to that, how are we feeling today?
I honestly never leave me again, Scott. I had a great time with our guest hosts, and I want to thank them once again. Those episodes did really well, and we got some great feedback from our listeners. So Dylan Waugh, Ian Boisvert, Andrew Berkshire, a huge shout out. I did do a solo episode, and I want to thank every single listener or friend who's reached out to me, because I got a lot of positive feedback for that. I was very worried about how it would go. So I just want to say thank you, and I'm appreciative. And I also want to ask you, Scott, how you're doing, because I know that this is a tough weekend for your city.
Yeah, for those who aren't aware, there was a horribly, racially motivated mass shooting in Buffalo about 5 minutes from my apartment where we're recording this. I was at work when I found out. By the time I had gotten home, I had a mountain of text messages to sift through. Carly and I are both fine. It is a little bit startling. You never think it's going to be in your neck of the woods, and I don't want to spend too much time on this. You can donate. I've retweeted Joe Yerdon's tweet about where to donate food, money, and other things like that. The City of Good Neighbors isn't going to go down easily. They're tough. The community is going to come together here. And not to sound cliche, but my thoughts and my prayers and all of my well wishes are with the victims and the people in that community. Hate has no place in hockey. Hate has no place in society. And I hope that sooner or later we can actually be better than all of this. And not to throw on a handbrake and make a hard right turn here, but we do have Montreal Canadiens things to talk about. And the first thing is, I'm seeing it on Twitter, and this happens every year. People are wondering if Shane Wright should be the Montreal Canadiens' first pick. And I look at this and I go, I need people to take a deep breath. He's a perfectly cromulent first overall pick. He is not Connor Bedard. We have talked about this during our draft episode and the lead up to the draft lottery episode. He is a very good player in the mold of a center the Montreal Canadiens need. And the Canadiens, if they are picking first overall, and they still are, they have not traded that pick or done anything, Shane Wright should be the only name on that board right now. Do I think there are other pieces that make sense? Yes, but if you are the Montreal Canadiens and you're looking at a Slavkovsky, a Logan Cooley, a David Jiricek, etc., you are trading the first overall pick then. You need to recoup cost and assets for that first overall pick. It is the most valuable bargaining tool that you have right now in terms of draft picks anyways. And I just got to say, the panic around whether Shane Wright is going to be the pick or not, it's dumb. it feels very hot take-ish because why enjoy a thing in Canadiens fandom here? You pick Shane Wright every single time right now. Unless something absolutely, truly stunning happens, Shane Wright is your pick.
I absolutely agree. And the thing is, like, I understand that Montreal Canadiens fans might be excited about Logan Cooley. He is an exciting player with a lot of talent and a huge upside. Nobody is denying this. But the thing is, we're not operating with like the wishes and desires. It's possible. Like, lots of people, like, I still think that Logan Cooley has a higher upside in the long run. Right now, the best player available right now is Shane Wright. If you are drafting right now, you have to draft the best player available. You have the number 1 overall pick. You go with the number 1 overall ranked prospect. I do not understand why this happens every single year. I think it's great for the player who's going to go number 2, and it's highly likely that it's
I'm
also
sorry. It was right there. It was right there. I'm so sorry.
We are 12 years old. Okay, let me finish my rant, Scott. I was on a roll, but it's highly likely that New Jersey, not needing centers, might take a defenseman and leave Logan Cooley for the 3rd spot, in which case the Arizona Coyotes, that's kind of like, it's a positive for them because they dropped, right? I think that the thing is, like, it's drafting is never an exact science. It's never a perfect art. It's never perfect. You never know 100% for sure. But in the moment that you are making that selection, you go with the best overall player. That's just the way it is.
And this isn't, like you said, this isn't like when Kotkaniemi went 3rd overall, where there was Brady Tkachuk and Quinn Hughes and there were options. And Kotkaniemi, in hindsight, did make sense. In hindsight, also, maybe Quinn Hughes would have been the better overall fit there for what the Canadiens needed, but that's hindsight is 2020. This is like, it's almost as slam dunk as when the Canadiens picked Cole Caulfield. When they were 15th overall, and the picks there, you could have Peyton Krebs or Alex Newhook or Cole Caulfield. You were running up to the podium and dunking that ball between your legs into the hoop there. It's Shane Wright, the consensus number 1 overall pick for what, the last 18 months? Like, I get it. He is not a flashy player. That's not his game. And we are lining up a very fun prospect guest that I cannot wait to ask him about this in the future, because I think it's going to be really important. I look at Shane Wright as something the Montreal Canadiens need right now, and that's a developing, smart, high IQ center behind Nick Suzuki. All due respect to Jake Evans and Christian Dvorak, they are what they are. Shane Wright has the hockey IQ ability to be something the Canadiens have not had in a long time. Yes, Nick Suzuki is here, but he was not their draft pick, so disqualification and this and that. Don't overthink this. Do not galaxy brain the 1st overall pick. If they do, it shatters a lot of the goodwill and confidence the Canadiens have built up in this organization right now by making smart, well thought out moves. Galaxy braining 1st overall in a draft where a guy's been there for 18 months it would be frightening a little bit. So I don't know. I don't get the panic over Shane Wright. And it's like, he's not flashy, this, that. I don't care that his playoffs haven't been overwhelming and this and whatnot. He lost an entire year of play due to COVID. What do you want? Kingston's not a very good team. There's a reason why he's on that team there. So pick Shane Wright. Don't be stupid. I don't have puns for the other players made up yet, so I will not be doing that in the meantime. However, we on Saturday got treated to 3 games 7, and we're going to talk about the first 2, the Bruins at Carolina. We're going to talk about the LA Kings and Edmonton Oilers, and that's all coming up next. But first, as we said, this show is brought to you by betonline.net, and our partners at BetOnline are the number 1 source for all of your betting needs and sports info. You can get all the latest odds, news, and sports developments for things like the NBA playoffs, Major League Baseball, the UFC, and boxing, even the NFL now that the schedule's been released. And they have all the information you need to make your wagers. I help that. I help my vendors at work make their picks, enough that several of them owe me lunch at this point. And betonline.net has been a big help with that. So please head to their website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and the action. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, so we're going to get to the important Game 7 last because I have a lot of thoughts about that, and not all of them are mean-spirited. I know that's going to disappoint a lot of you folks. And we're going to talk about the first two Game 7s from Saturday. And Boston lost to Carolina, and the Edmonton Oilers overcame some of their first-round demons, knocking off the LA Kings. And I don't have much to say in the Edmonton series except for thank God. It probably should not have gone 7 games. And if it didn't and they lost, Connor McDavid's likely on a new team very soon. I'm very curious to see Edmonton against a team that is actually a little more well-structured in terms of how they play. And we are, after this episode will come out after we know who has won the Calgary-Dallas series. And if we get a second round Battle of Alberta, it's going to be a glorious car crash of a train falling off a mountain into a pile of toxic waste barrels. I cannot wait to watch it. And if we don't get it, I'm going to be so upset. And I guess in the good things is, yay, Brett Kulak, who was actually a very big part of the Oilers' victory there. He stepped up when Darnell Nurse got suspended, and I think he's been a really smart find for the Oilers. But if you listen to this podcast and listen to my very smart co-host and myself, you would know that Brett Kulak is very good at hockey already.
That's the thing, is that was one of the players that we were sad to see go, and we hope he comes back. And that was, we talked about this a lot, is that a team is going to pay more for Ben Sherratt, but the team that got Brett Kulak is going to get more value. And I don't, it's too early to tell after one round how Ben Sherratt is doing, but I certainly feel that Brett Kulak has really made himself known. He's a player that, it's very sad to see him go. He apparently also just became a father, or his daughter was born at some point during the series. So he's got the dad strength. In the playoffs when the dad strength happens. I apparently have forgotten how to do podcasting. I did so much of it last week that it's just gone all the way. Yeah, he's such a nice story, to be honest. Like, he seems like such a great guy. We've always liked how his value is just so good. He's such a good player. He's an underrated player. And I think that that's a word that gets thrown around about too many people, and particularly too many defensemen. But he's one of those where I certainly think that, the contribution that he makes to any team is significant. I'm happy for the fact that we might get a Battle of Alberta. So I hope that, by the time you're listening to this, the Calgary Flames have not screwed this up. But at the same time, I also just think that it's such a great story. And I also want to talk about the Kings for a second, because the Kings are an example of a team where you wouldn't have expected them to make the playoffs this early, but after their years of Stanley Cup success, they were a pretty bad team, and they had a really good prospect depth. Like, they were really good about their drafting. They were really smart about their moves. Now, I don't want to sit here and praise LA. That's not what I'm here to do. But I think that that's something that could give Canadiens fans hope, is that they did make the playoffs. They also played a really tough team in Edmonton. They went to a 7-game series, and I feel like that's a good sort of, it should make Canadiens fans feel good, because they were very, very particular and careful about building from within. They added key pieces like Philippe Danault. Playoff Philippe Danault is a force to be reckoned with. But I like that they have a bunch of young guys, and a lot of them are just kind of like, who is that guy? But they've done a really good job of developing the prospects that they had, and their prospect depth is still pretty well regarded. But that's what I would like the Canadiens to do, is have good, draft really well, but also develop that prospect depth in such a way that they will seem promising. Like, they get kicked out of the first round of the playoffs and you're not sad. You're like, this was great. This is the experience that I wanted these young kids to have.
And I look at LA, and they did this without Drew Doughty, or a good starting goaltender. That's a lot to ask against Edmonton, who is a very strong, a very top-heavy team. But the top-heavy is Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, perennial Hart and Rocket Richard candidates. That's not easy to play against, and they did well, or as well as you could expect. Philippe Danault has been a really strong addition for them, and someone that I would like to still be on the Canadiens there. And that's a good tale for what the Canadiens, like, yeah, you're not going to win every year, but they built up that depth and they have more pieces coming. And now to kind of shift the focus here to a team who's on the opposite end of the spectrum. The Boston Bruins lost in 7 games to the Carolina Hurricanes. And that core now it's getting older. It's aging out a little bit. Brad Marchand's an older player now. David Pasternak's still in his prime. He's not going anywhere, but you've lost David Krejci. You've lost a good chunk of that defense. You still have Charlie McAvoy, but like Torrey Krug is no longer there. Tuukka Rask is gone, and the rumors are swirling. As much as we joke about Patrice Bergeron joining the Canadiens, is he might just be retiring at this point, just from what people like Emily Benjamin, who cover the team there, from his press conferences during the series and just the way that he was saying goodbye to guys as they were leaving the ice there. You wonder if he's done. What does that mean for the Bruins, who are still a good team, but now you're just ripping out a huge chunk of that team there? And it's a lot over the last couple of years here. And it stings for the Bruins. I think it was Pete Blackburn who said, I would have rather they had beaten us in 4 games than ripped our heart out like this. And I know a lot of Toronto people were like, we shouldn't have been afraid of Boston. I don't think this Boston team would have lost to Toronto. I don't think Toronto would have beaten this Boston team. Carolina's a different animal, and they won games with their second and third choice goaltenders. That's how you get by in the playoffs. And Carolina, as much as I do not like Tom Dundon, has built that franchise up real well with prospects, and they're a scary out for anybody. You got to wonder what's the timeline for the Bruins here, because their prospect pool isn't super loaded, and you might be losing Patrice Bergeron. You don't replace that with the snap of your fingers like that.
I think Patrice Bergeron is the heart and soul of the Boston Bruins and a big chunk of the Boston sports community. And I think that, we've talked a lot over the course of the season. Oh, Kent Hughes is his agent. In fact, there were some quote unquote insiders talking about like Kent Hughes is his agent. So there's chatter about him going to Montreal. Why would Patrice Bergeron sign in Montreal? These same insiders said it was a team he grew up watching. Patrice Bergeron was a Quebec Nordiques fan, for those of you who did not know. So no, he was not a childhood fan of the Montreal Canadiens. And no, just because Kent Hughes was his agent and he has a lot of respect for him and has a good relationship with Kent Hughes, does not mean he's coming to Montreal. I think the choice for him is, do I retire or not? And the or not only includes Boston, very much like Tuukka Rask, right? And if he does retire, it's going to be really sad because he is such a phenomenal player. He is one of the best in the game. I feel like he's one of those players that you can kind of talk about redefining that two-way center role. And Nick Suzuki himself emulates Patrice Bergeron, right? Like, this is like the hero of these guys. I believe Shane Wright as well has said something to the effect of that, which is what prompted a lot of the comparisons to him and all of that stuff. Like, I will be very sad to see him end his career, but I don't see him playing anywhere other than Toronto. Not like, Boston. Can I win another Stanley Cup? Boston. Do you know why I thought this? Is because people were talking about how maybe he'll go to Toronto and he'll be the difference there. He'll finally get them past that first round. I want
to be nice to Toronto today. I'm
trying
to be nice
to Toronto. I'm just saying that Patrice Bergeron will probably not play anywhere other than Boston. So it's either, do I want to win another Stanley Cup with Boston, or do I want to hang them up? I don't think it's, do I want to win another Stanley Cup? I'll go anywhere for 1 year.
Yeah, not the Ray Bourque style thing here. And since we've mentioned Toronto, we would be not doing our due diligence if we didn't talk about another first round exit for the Toronto Maple Leafs. And we're going to get into all that coming up in our next segment. But as always, on this podcast, we love Built Bar, and we love the new Built Bar Puffs. They are protein-infused marshmallows. They are an amazing treat. The birthday cake puffs, just got a sample box of them. Even my parents like them, and my parents usually are not the kind to eat chocolate-covered anything because that's not their style, and this is great. My dad can take them on the go when he's coming to and from running errands. I can take them out when I'm going to work, when I need to pick me up in the middle of the day, or when I've gotten done walking the dog because it is 75 degrees, and this one has boundless energy. They are absolutely incredible. They have 150 calories, 16 grams of protein, only 9 grams of sugar. you got to get the limited flavor birthday cake puffs now. Go to built.com, use promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off your order. Get the birthday cake puffs. They are the treat you deserve every single day of the week. And that's promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. All right. So we watched with bated breath on Saturday night as Toronto and Tampa Bay went to a decisive Game 7 in Toronto at the Scotiabank Arena now, not the Air Canada Center.
I still call it the ACC.
It is. It's cursed forever. It doesn't matter what you call it. It's still cursed. Harold Ballard needs to be exorcised from that building. Toronto didn't get it done again. And at the same time, I want to sit here and I want to make fun of Toronto because this is the year they do it. Look at all the pieces they've got. Then they went out and got Mark Giordano. They got Andre Kasha. Michael Bunting, who is 37 years old, is going to win the Calder. Jack Campbell was a Vezina candidate for part of the season. Everything's clicking. Best regular season the Leafs have ever had, and they didn't get it done. And I look at this and I go, they got contributions from William Nylander. Austin Matthews was noticeable. John Tavares had a very strong end to the series, even though he was very quiet to start it. Mitch Marner had some crucial moments, even if he wasn't the leading goal scorer that they need for this. And I look at this series and I go, if you were going to blow it up, you should have done it last year after the Montreal fiasco. You came close this year where it was a coin flip of a series where any game could have gone either way whatsoever, and they didn't go in Toronto's favor in 4 of them. Literal coin flip of a series, the closest we've seen in the first round so far. And I still look at this and go, they have to do something right. It's not that they got out coached. For stretches here and there, maybe they didn't get goalied like they did against Carey Price. Their stars showed up to play. The depth after they figured out after the first 2 games that you can't play the goon muscle style, they just couldn't get over the hump there. They're close, and at the same time, they shouldn't do anything, but you have contract extensions, not a lot of cap space. You got to do something at this point. It wasn't disastrous. It wasn't hilarious like last year's game against Montreal. It even, like I've asked Leafs fans, it doesn't sting so much more. Last year hurt a lot. This year, there's no shame in losing, but at the same time, this is the closest they've been, and they didn't get it done.
They had a historic season, right? This was one of their best seasons in history, if not the best. I don't know. I wasn't paying that much attention to their previous seasons, to be honest. They did have a great season with a lot of great players. They did seem to have kicked it into another gear. They really seem to be firing on all cylinders, but then they ran into a team that knows how to win Stanley Cups. And I had this conversation with a Tampa Bay Lightning friend, and I was like, listen, let's be honest. Tampa did not deserve to win that series. In Game 6 and in Game 7, Toronto was absolutely dominant, and Vasilevsky was giving up fat, juicy rebounds, right? But here's what he pointed out. This is 3 years in a row where they've played more than any other team in the NHL. A lot of those players have that experience, plus the coaching staff has that experience. They played just well enough to not lose because after 2 full runs to the Cup final, they have to preserve their energy for another long run. So he was like, they didn't need to play their best. They were just playing well enough to not lose. That was it. And Vasilevsky did shut the door at some points in Game 7, but that's not the guy. This entire series, I was watching that and I was like, the Habs couldn't get one past that guy, or you know what I mean? Or more past that guy, to be honest. Vasilevsky is currently the best goaltender in the world. I don't think we can argue about that, but he's not playing to the level that we're used to seeing him play. It's the same thing with all of them. There's something about how smart they are doing it, because Toronto, any other team, I think Toronto would have beat.
I look at this and I go, Tampa Bay in Game 7 was right there for the picking. They were up early. They were up 2-0, and Toronto came back. They lost Braden Point. He tried to come back. He took one shift and went, nope. There was a point where Nikita Kucherov was taking 20-second shifts, and he hasn't looked right all series. He looks like he's permanently hungover on the ice and just exhausted. He might be injured. Corey Perry, and I'm trying to think of who the other guy in the fourth line was, did not play a lot in that game. Pat Maroon was the only fourth liner getting regular shifts. They were down to like 9 forwards, and Toronto wasn't able to take advantage of that. And we can talk about the interference call. What Justin Hall did is interference. Whether it's been called all the time or not is up for debate, but it is interference. He set a moving pick on a guy. You can't do that, and you can't make it so obvious either. And I get that it hurts and it stings, and you're going to look at this, and it's don't blame the refs for this series. Is that sometimes it's just a bounce or two. Toronto had their chances to close it out. They fired a shot through the crease in game 6 in overtime before that goal went in. It's not always something else out there. And I actually don't have that many mean things to say about Toronto. They're in just this very weird position where they are so good in that they should make the playoffs with their eyes closed every season. But they are running the risk now of becoming no-frills San Jose from like 2006 to the year they went to the Stanley Cup final. Always good enough to make the playoffs, but never good enough to get over their hump, which was making the Stanley Cup final, and they finally did, and they lost in that. And sorry, Kyle and JD, we do love you guys. It's not to rip open a wound. Toronto right now is good enough to cruise through the regular season, and they just can't get past that first round hump. I don't know if it's just a mental thing or what, but they're a team in a tough spot now. You have big contracts still on the books. You have extensions kicking in. You have to re-sign your starting goalie, and you have to ask yourself the question, is Sheldon Keefe the guy to get us over the hump here? Because defensively this season, they were better. Their goaltending outside of, where everyone was injured was better. The offense, Austin Matthews is a Hart candidate, potentially a Hart trophy winning forward. John Tavares is your second line center. At what point do you change something to make something happen? I don't think Kyle Dubas is on the hot seat, at least not yet. I think Sheldon Keefe might be. I wouldn't be shocked if they run it back. I almost feel bad, and then I don't, because some of their fans have been absolutely horrific to both of us, and I don't. They're so close, and yet at the same time, it feels like they are just miles away from actually hitting that goal just because of what's going on up here.
Yeah, I absolutely think so. A friend of mine, not a Toronto fan, not a Habs fan either, we were talking and he was like, whatever happens today, he's actually a Pittsburgh fan. Whatever happens today, Toronto lost yesterday. And I sent him the response and like, how many times does it have to happen before we start feeling sorry for them? And he said, it's not going to happen. I do think though, and I don't feel sorry because I am a Montreal Canadiens fan. Toronto's our biggest rival, and their fans have bullied and harassed both of us for months because it was 3-1. Like literally we would tweet what happened in the game, and then we would get bullied and harassed, and some of it was misogynistic and some of it was racist, and some people made fun of mental health in really just not appropriate manners. And so like, I don't feel bad for them. I don't feel bad for any of those people. But when you look at, like, if you look at it in a vacuum, it's a sad story, right? No matter what they do. And up until this season, I would honestly have said that, like, in a lot of their playoff series, they would have deserved to win, right? Like, I think that's fair. In this one, I thought they particularly deserved to win, right? Like, there's no argument. There's no Washington, Boston, whatever you want to talk about, that debate you want to have. This series, I thought, this is the one where they're playing in such a way where I feel like I'm convinced that they deserve to win and that they could win and that they will. And I had said Leafs in 7. I said, they would break the curse this time. You make a lot of, like, people like to say that they deserve to win last year against the Habs. Well, then why did they allow the Habs to get into their heads? That's not what happened this time. They were dominant. Like, I was watching them, like, just absolutely dominate Tampa. Just absolutely. And then they just couldn't get a goal in. It was just, I don't know. Anyway, I don't feel sorry for Toronto fans, but it is in a vacuum. If you look at it objectively, it's a sad story.
Yes, I feel bad for some people, but this is tremendous content for us as outside watchers. That is the nicest I will be to Toronto for the next year. Maybe I will, try and be more sympathetic in the future. All I know is it was 3-1. The Montreal Canadiens are drafting first overall. And yeah, we do have special guests coming up this week. We're going to be talking QMJHL prospects. That means Joshua Waugh, Riley Kidney, William Trudeau, Xavier Simoneau, and some of the other draft eligibles. We're setting a time date to figure that all out for sure, but we will have that this week, and we cannot wait. Until then, please subscribe to our channel on YouTube. We are closing in on, I want to say 600 subscribers the last time I checked.
No, we're past 700.
I missed a lot in the week that I was off. So one, thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
We're going to push for 1,000, baby. We're going to push for 1,000. Let's try and get to 1,000 by the NHL draft, shall we? You can follow Laura at The Active Stick. You can follow me at Scott Matlow. You can follow the show at LO_Canadians on Twitter, where we will have all of our episodes, retweets, and fun stuff there. When you're done checking us out, please check out Locked On NHL, where you get all the latest from our local experts. Can't miss it. Great show. We will see you all next time.